What's going on,
Steven,
brother? How
what
you
is
doing?
going on, brother?
How was
Beautiful.
everything?
Good. How about you, man?
Good, good. Thank you so much for having me on here.
Dude, what man, look at the collection in the background. Holy, wow, shit.
Listen, I had to have static tape get me right. Last what was it? I think it was last weekend to buff up the collection. So I just figured
Man, oh
this
man.
is good timing, you know?
Man, dude, how awesome. And for us to have a spot like Static Tape, just
Oh
what a
man,
win. Holy
listen,
moly.
I'll tell you this much: you guys are very fortunate to have something like that so close to you. I'm not gonna lie. Maybe there's some spots I don't know about out on the east side, but it's I feel like unfortunately I have to rely on either going through him to order stuff or ordering stuff like outside of the state, unfortunately. So
Dude, you ain't lying. I mean, as far as it's always fun to have something, and order something online and have that package on the porch and
oh, for
all that,
sure,
but it is truly something that I never try to take for granted, much less in Michigan, but then the shop is like 10 minutes from me.
for
So it's
sure.
just like,
No, you're very
oh,
blessed.
so sick. So man, yeah, like I say, thank you for taking the time today. I'm so excited, and for somebody also, growing up in Michigan and living in Michigan and having, kind of the comparisons and differences. I'm excited to hear about, growing up on the
For
east side. But to
sure.
start, let's dig into something as far as a Steven stack,
Okay.
and see some movies that you have in your collection and some stuff that you kind of came up with for this. So, what are we looking like, brother?
Okay, so I got you covered. So I put together, give me one second. So I think you'll appreciate this.
Oh yeah. Hey yo, man. Oh man.
Got some gems in there.
Holy man. Some
So
arrows. Oof. Okay. All
so
right. I'm ready.
got a little bit of everything. So first and foremost, I had to kick it off with this.
Suspiria,
Yeah, this
dude.
4K transfer is easily, I think I would argue, probably one of my top five favorites.
Damn.
So this is one that initially I would say between this and Zombie were the ones that really kicked it off for me as far as getting into like Italian horror, foreign films, things of that nature. So I had to put that. I couldn't leave this one out.
Dude, and I have to say, our buddy Kyle is on here too. I, for the longest time, was a hater on Suspiria.
Oh
I was
no.
not a fan of it when I was young. I watched it. I just didn't get it. I wasn't in the, right
For
mindset, maybe
sure.
didn't understand. I watched it recently. I'd gotten the remake, and I've loved the remake since I had watched that. And
I
I
saw
rewatched the
you pick that
original.
up, the
Yeah,
imprint
yeah,
release. Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
it's
And
really
Static
nice.
Tape.
Yep.
Shout out to Harrison for having that.
Yeah.
Jesus H. My bank account doesn't always appreciate his shop,
Oh
but
God. Yeah. Oh, trust me, I'm all too familiar with that.
but I have to say I rewatched the original. I think it was last week or 2 weeks ago.
Okay.
It is phenomenal, dude. It is such a good movie. I really fucked up for all the years that I was kind of hating on that. It's
Okay.
awesome.
And I will say though, I do like that because for a while there, I was kind of hesitant on the remake, but the fact that it kind of did its own thing, it was kind of its own twist on it.
Sure.
I appreciate that just because I think if it's a retread of the Argento one, it's kind of its own thing, and
Totally.
I can appreciate both movies for what they are, which is I don't know in that regards I hold them up and both up in very high regards for sure.
Yeah, and it's a slippery slope because you kind of hear every once in a while when they talk about taking a remake and it varying from the original. It's
For
like,
sure.
oh boy, this might be bad. But you have examples like the Evil Dead remake that I
Yeah,
love that is still close to the original, but still has its own liberties.
carved
Whereas
out
that
its own niche.
Suspiria, yeah,
Yep.
yeah, sure. But man, oh man, dude, yeah, I messed up. That original Suspiria is awesome, and
Oh,
what a great release too.
yeah, I was that was right when I was first getting into 4Ks and obviously like the big ones like starting off with my collection were because I had made the jump from initially like a long time ago I had about like this is back in college like high school and college I had about like 300 DVDs so
Hmm.
it seemed like just such an obscure hobby to be into and then you find out about all these other people that are into this. I'm like, okay, I didn't realize there was this whole community out there that was into like horror and movies the same way that I was, so it's kind
Yeah,
of it's nice to be well received in that regards. But
same. Yeah,
um
same.
so the next one I got not to
Oof.
double dip on
Oh
Argento, but
man.
I had to pick Tenebrae. So that is, I would probably, depending on the day that you ask me, that's probably my favorite Argento film. Um,
Agree.
I had an opportunity to see Goblin. It was maybe about a month or so ago, and saw them out at the Crowfoot out in Pontiac,
Oh,
and
dude.
actually got my Tenebrae soundtrack signed by Claudio Simonetti. So
Oh
yeah,
man.
that was definitely a cool experience, and it's just to see this music that you've heard, countless times in various Italian horror movies. Just to see that live was quite the experience for sure.
Do they do that along with the movie playing then?
For this one, it was kind of like your greatest hits, basically. So it was
Okay.
tapping into, I would say, you're going to get like Demons, Suspiria, Tenebrae, Opera, Phenomena, movies like that. So when you're getting those plus, I think a lot of their like own original content in mixed in there. I mean, we were there for probably about like an hour and a half, 2 hours, and I don't
Mm,
know. I just kind of a last minute thing. I was like, I've always wanted to see Goblin, so I thought
dude,
that would be definitely worth
man,
it. So
you ain't lying. That's awesome. What is that? Is that an Arrow release? That
this
Tenebrae?
this one is Synapse, and then I believe the yeah, so that and
Spirit.
Suspiria both got
Yeah,
4K releases through Synapse, so
man.
uh, they do exceptional work. So I'm always excited to see maybe what else they have, cooking in the near future. But I love both of those releases. And
Absolutely.
then I know you were touching on this earlier. Got Evil
Ooh-wee.
Dead, yeah.
Man,
So
there we
got the double
go.
feature. Had a chance
Okay.
to, yeah, had a chance to see that over at least the first one at the Ford Drive-In, which was a cool experience. Getting to see it on the big screen.
You guys
So
have a
made it a
drive-in?
yeah, yep,
Oh,
out in Dearborn.
no
Yeah,
shit.
yep.
Wow. Okay.
So I'm always holding out hope. Like my wife and I, we've had a chance to go see a few movies: Candyman, Scream, Halloween, Nightmare on Elm Street, and then they trying to think. Last year, I believe they did Dawn of the Dead and Day of the Dead. So,
Wow.
the occasional screens that they have where they're hosting those, it's like I can't miss that. And Evil Dead was one of them.
Dude, that is so sick. We have the Getty Drive-in. That's in Muskegon.
Okay,
And I wasn't aware that there was another in Michigan. I know that there's very
yeah.
few in the States,
Oh,
much
it's
less two in the state.
yeah. We have. I would say that's probably the closest one, and I know we've been to a couple other ones. I'm blanking on the names of them before, but it's not anything that's close by, and especially during COVID, those were
Mm-hmm.
something to really go out of our way for, just because you didn't really have any other way to watch movies, during
Sure.
that time. So
Yeah. Damn. That's
yeah,
awesome.
yeah. So the next one I got the Arrow release, Videodrome, of course, David Cronenberg.
Man, oh man.
Um, yeah, this is another one that kind of kicked off when I started getting into like body horror, and Cronenberg is kind of its own beast, I feel like. So getting into those movies, that was definitely something that was quite the experience to see what's really out there.
Yeah. And
And
really out there, much
oh,
less.
100%, 100%. And then now you've got his son that's doing some exceptional work, and
Man.
Possessor and Infinity Pool were some more recent favorites that I've seen him do.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
um, and then got Criterion's release of
Oh man.
Eraserhead,
Oh
David
dude.
Lynch classic. This one, I'll start off by saying a big Twin Peaks fan through and through. So
Okay.
grew up on that, and that led me to getting into more of his movies like Mulholland Drive, Blue Velvet, Lost Highway, Eraserhead. It's like some fever dream. It's like just so bizarre, and just to see it get such a prestige love, I would say through Criterion is awesome. And I feel like now the way that they're going, a lot of these Blu-rays are getting the 4K treatment. So
Mm,
fingers crossed. I'm hoping that ends up getting that later on down the line.
dude, absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
then I got the Blue Underground release of the New York Ripper,
Oh,
Lucio
dude.
Fulci.
I've never
Yeah.
seen that.
Oh, you would love it if you're big on like
I
slashers.
yeah.
Highly recommend it. It's very mean spirited, so just kind of just go into that with that mentality. I feel like a lot of the giallos that Fulci did are just kind of they're kind of
Yeah,
intense. You know,
yeah.
as with a lot of his other films for sure. So
Oh man. I
that's
think I had when I went one of the times I went to Static Tape, I'd had that in my hand or Amsterdamned. Have you seen that?
I haven't.
Oh, dude. I was so glad. I mean, Harrison was really the big, kind of plug on like, you've got to check this one out. I think that
Yeah,
this is going to be the one. And dude, it was absolutely the one. That movie is awesome.
was it
It's basically this like he's like like a diver,
okay?
and it's a slasher. He's going around and he's just mutilating people, and there's this
Oh,
like
Jesus Christ!
insane chase scene toward the end, like boats going through Amsterdam. Dude, it's awesome. It is
I'll
so sick.
definitely add that to my watch list. Listen, I'm always down to check out new stuff. There's plenty of movies that I haven't seen
Oh,
before.
same
So
here, same here. No, and New York Ripper, that was another one where I have to get back, and I hear plenty about the duck sounds and the kind of creepiness to it.
oh,
So,
it's very out
man,
there. It's not like your I would say like you get your American slashers and they're pretty straightforward. This is just like I don't know what headspace you have to be in to be able to to make these movies, but at least it's, in this community, at least I feel like we have an appreciation for it.
totally, totally, man, oh man. So, I mean, as far as growing up, and maybe this goes to film or maybe this goes to video games, skating, anything. How bring us back to growing up and some of the interests that you had.
So, growing up, some of the big interests that I had, I was really big on at kind of an early age. I was exposed to, I would say, The Godfather and Godfather 2 were big jumping on points for me to really see movies in a more serious light. So my dad kind of got me into that when I was a little bit younger, and we had a Jurassic Park VHS that got more than its fair share of use in
Mm.
our house. So um, that led me to being exposed to, I would say, Jaws, or like, Jaws, Gremlins, Poltergeist, because, those movies at the time, I mean, they got a very light rating, but in
Mm-hmm.
reality, those movies, I mean, by all
Horrifying.
stand, yeah, they were really creepy to see them at a young age, and I don't know how I was able to get away with watching them, but
Yeah.
yeah, so it kind of started with that, and then The Godfather led to, I would say, Goodfellas, Casino. I learned about Sopranos that way, and then that branched off really into learning about that. There's more serious directors out there. So you have your Martin Scorsese, John Carpenter, David Cronenberg, David Lynch, Wes Craven. Directors like that, and that's really what snowballed my interest into getting into movies for
Mm.
sure. So
Man, that's awesome. Dude, and even mentioning, Jurassic Park, like as notable as that movie is and famous in regard, I mean, myself seeing that at I don't know if I was 6, 7, whatever it
yeah.
was, in theater, and just the pummeling of, like the stomps and the water on the dashboard and looking over and the goat is
Oh,
gone,
it's
it's
terrifying.
just like holy shit.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was off.
And I remember, I don't know if you've ever read the book, but the book is just,
Haven't.
there's a lot more that was obviously for the sake of putting it on film, but there's a lot that was left out where I just was like, if you had truly adapted this, like I love the film obviously, but there's a lot more content that you could probably flesh it out even more, and it would be that much more
Mm,
terrifying, but
wow,
yeah, it's that one's definitely one that kind of left a mark on me for sure.
dude. I mean, and touching on that, in theaters or video rentals, after hour video, I mean, you've kind of adapted that with personality on here. How does that go? What does that look like for you as far as special moments or maybe things that stick out to you in your mind today from those early experiences in either?
I would say the most memorable experiences were growing up. You'd have those weekly trips, like usually on a Friday, out to like Blockbuster, Family Video, some of the more local, different like video rental stores that were around at the time, and just kind of going through. And I felt like there was more of an appreciation for checking out these movies, based on the box art.
Mm,
That's a big thing, and it's funny because a lot of those movies that I feel like you would take note of, it's like, okay, you look at them now, and you recognize some of the cover art that you saw way back when, and it's like you can put kind of that the image to the actual movie itself. So
Hmm.
it's pretty cool. Like I see different boutique labels now, like TerraVision, for example,
Hmm.
or Vinegar Syndrome, and those labels. It's so cool to see that they're highlighting these obscure shot on video movies that you would see, and it's like these movies only existed in the video store. I mean, most like, people outside the maybe the horror community would not really be all too familiar with them. So, and like movie posters for sure. Like
Hmm.
that's I think such a pinnacle aspect of diving into movies. So those are the main things I remember. Just you find hidden gems and things along those lines. But we weren't like growing up. My brother and I. So my at least my mom was very did not want us renting rated R movies. So I had to be super low key about it with renting them. So I remember in the summers, so I go down to this local video store. I rent VHSs and DVDs and these movies that I had no business renting at the time at an early age. But that's the coolest part is that's how I developed my love for movies, especially horror movies that way. So
Hmm. Hmm.
that's really like the one memory that sticks out to me for sure.
I love I love it because I go back to those memories as well, and I think of that time that we weren't surrounded by five or six small trailers or
No,
things that are so accessible online, or even seeing trailers for these things on TV,
for sure.
and still having that today, still having recent movies that are coming out. I saw the TV glow, just I mean
Oh
more
yeah,
where the cover art is still appreciated and the artists are putting heart and soul into these things. And man, what a cool thing to still have today. That wasn't lost by the times of I know what you did last summer covers and
for
shit
sure.
like that.
For sure. And there's just something so iconic about those. I feel like those movies growing up, they were just so iconic with the cover art versus now. I mean, I think you get the boutique love for sure on some releases, but your typical movies that are put out there, I feel like it's a lot of carbon copies of very similar movie poster styles, and I think it's kind of unfortunately, it's kind of a lost art.
Hmm. Yeah, sure, sure. Now, what were some of those local video shops? Some of the mom and pops. Do you remember the names of them?
Um, So we had, I wouldn't say this is like necessarily mom and pop. We had a Hollywood Video that
Hmm.
was
Yeah,
like one
yeah.
of the less known ones. We
Hmm.
also had, growing up where I was at, we had Superstar Video, Video 226, which were, it's just they were there for X amount of years, and then eventually, kind of as you know, I would say streaming became more and more common. I mean, those unfortunately got phased out, but those places growing up between that Blockbuster, Family Video were some of the places where it's like, you find out about at an early age, like Faces of Death or Cannibal Holocaust.
Yeah.
It's just like for most people, it's just you're not renting these obscure weird movies like that, but
Hmm.
that's how you develop, I think, your love for cinema that way.
Yeah, absolutely. Family Video was always kind of, I feel like a little bit more infamous for that,
For sure,
when you're going through that dollar VHS section and, they have something like Faces of Death or Traces of Death. It's like, why is this still here? Like,
for
who the
sure. Yep,
fuck
I know, I
is
know.
doing
It's
this?
I remember like Henry Portrait of a Serial Killer and just being like,
Oh, man.
what is that? Like you just want to know what it is because it feels like you're not supposed to watch something like that, but you can't help but look away and want to know what it's about.
Oh, dude. And then, I mean, it dove into, my friends always ruining our weekends with, the websites and Gorish and
Oh yeah.
Rotten.com. And, it was like, I don't know if you dove into that, but I was always like, can we just watch movies?
Yeah.
I don't want to see this shit.
No, no, no. Listen, the world's already cruel enough as is. Let's just
Right.
keep it to movies, ideally.
I want to at least maybe appreciate an artist's, take on how
For
they cut this guy's head off. I don't
for
want to actually
sure,
see
for
it.
sure. Yep, 100%.
No, I mean, as far as, like your theater experience, did you have certain movies that, were just that good that you had to go back and, see time and time again, or maybe one that comes to mind that you saw maybe too much in the theater?
I would say it was more so. especially I would say when I was really getting to movies, it was around that time. There was a lot of horror remakes
Mm.
at that, kind of point in time. A lot of them, I would say, it was more so renting stuff. Like I said, it was always like super low key about how I was finding out about these movies. So I'd bring back Halloween
Mm.
or Nightmare on Elm Street or Scream or Friday the 13th, movies like that. You'd bring them back, and I'd have to wait till, everyone's gone to sleep to watch them just to see what it's all about. You know what I'm saying? So, um, but yeah, those are the ones that I would say those always stood out to me, especially because that's where I really started discovering my love for horror
Mm.
more than anything was
Yeah.
was through those movies.
Have you gone back to some that you loved as a kid and watched, recently, and it just didn't quite hold up?
Um, it's hard to say. I think even the movies that I feel like now, maybe they don't hold up as well, but I still appreciate it, I think, because of the time that it represents. You
Sure.
know, do I think that the horror remakes maybe during the 2000s are always the best examples of like movies that I come back to, or do they hold up quite as much? Maybe not necessarily. I mean, there's some that I like more than others, but um, yeah, I just appreciate it for the time that it was. You see these decades of movies that came out, and I think it's so easy to focus on the 80s and 90s, but I think the 2000s and 2010s, also have their own special place for certain different horror movies or movies that came out during that time.
Oh, dude. I mean, the first thing I guess that comes to mind is like the French Extreme. I mean, we
Oh,
love our
yep,
80s, we love our
yep.
90s. Some of the stuff that was coming out, like earlier 2000s, even today. I mean, there is like absolutely it's kind of bothersome sometimes when people are like, "Man, I just want to see all the stuff from the 80s and, 70s and all." It's like, dude, you are missing out,
For
man.
sure.
There's some great shit going
There,
on.
if finding out about movies like I would say Inside,
Oh,
Martyrs,
oh,
High
dude.
Tension, uh, Frontiers, movies like that are just, and it was a very specific time that these were coming out pretty almost in rapid
Hmm.
succession. But I would argue that those are probably some of the most over the top horror movies out there. And there's not, I'll be honest, there's not a lot of stuff that comes close to it, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah, no, absolutely, absolutely. I know even past that, which is kind of funny because I feel like it has nothing to do with area wise, even time. But Baskin was another one. Jean Evernal, some of the stuff that guy
Oh yeah,
does. I
yeah.
don't know if you've ever seen Baskin or not, but dear
Long
God,
time ago.
holy,
Yep,
oy,
yep.
oy, dude! But it feels that for whatever reason, I think of French Extreme, and that movie kind of clumps in with that. And I think it's just like the overall grittiness and just dirty and kind of mean spirited, kind of like
For
you were
sure.
saying, with some of the the older Italian stuff. Like, wow,
Yeah,
we.
there's like I feel like with those movies, there's like a time and a place for them
Hmm.
because by the time you're done watching them, you kind of feel gross. It's not something I would, these are not comfort movies that I would come back and revisit all that often. It's the same thing I would say with as far as Italian horror, like the cannibal subgenre,
Mm.
with those type of movies, I appreciate what they are, but it's
Hmm.
not something I can come back and constantly revisit.
Hmm.
You
Yeah,
know?
oh yeah, yeah. Even like the Green Inferno, that being like
Oh
an
yeah,
American release. Like when I had saw that, I was like, it'll be probably some time
for
when I come
sure,
back to this.
for sure. You're not gonna be eating any time after that movie. The credits roll.
Oh my god. No, I mean, as far as like, are there any that come to mind that had, just pushed it too far and that you had said, I don't want to be here. I don't think I want to check out anything else from this director.
Um, I would say Martyrs is kind of the top end
Mm.
of as far as my level of how much I can sit through because I just feel like you get to a certain point and then it's almost like I'm questioning my morals like like why am I sitting through this movie or like what am I getting out of this? But
Yeah,
that would I would say would be kind of on the top end, like I was telling you movies like Cannibal Holocaust and Faces of Death. I mean, if you go back and watch them now, I think that there's more the lore behind why they were banned. It's like it had such this
sure.
reputation at the time, so that's why I hold those kind of like at the time I know that they were very controversial, but that's why I always come back to them, and it's just it again time capsule for when they were
Yeah,
released.
yeah, yeah, makes sense. I've got to ask, have you seen a Serbian film?
I haven't. There's some of those more extreme movies that I haven't been privy to.
Nah, it's just one where I've heard so much and I know what it's about, I know what it entails, and maybe it shows, maybe it doesn't. And there's things even on my scale of all of the gross shit that I have, succumbed to with watching
Yeah,
movies where I'm just like, I don't have interest with this.
yeah,
Or,
I'm good.
another one was Salo. I bought that a
Yeah.
long time ago, even before I think I had to get it on eBay, and it was just a DVD, copy of it or whatever, and really excited because it was rare
Oh
and it was,
yeah.
one of those movies you couldn't get a hold of anywhere, and I sold that thing just as soon as I was done watching it. I'm like, oh, why did I do
There's
this to
certain movies
myself?
that I don't think have any place really, on our shelf, or maybe there's like the niche audience out there for it, but
And
I
there
think for a
is,
majority of
yeah.
us, watching those type of movies, it doesn't really. I don't think it really does anything for me, to be honest.
No, no, no. And I always laugh too because I always go to Static Tape and Salo is always on that shelf. People buy the fuck out of that movie. And I'm like, boy, these
I
rascals, what are you doing? You're
I
gonna ruin
know.
your Sunday.
I know. Listen, there's plenty of better ways to spend my money. Yeah,
And they have like a nice like Criterion release. Is it Yeah, I
I
believe
think
it's
it might
Criterion.
be. Yeah.
Yeah, which is also kind of insane. And I understand the whole like story behind it and all, but like we say, it's just kind of one of those things where I'm like, I have plenty of things that are kind of out there and wild and kooky, but stuff like that. I've got kids as well, so my boy
Okay.
comes
Yeah.
in and treats it like a video rental and picks stuff off, and I'm like, I don't
They're
want him
never going to be
grabbing
the same kid
Salo.
again.
Yeah, yeah, you don't need to see this,
Yeah. No.
buddy.
No. No. No.
What about particular scenes? We watch all of these movies and we have the fun and have that appreciation. But what are a couple that stick out to you as far as maybe just disgusting, over the top? Maybe it was just something that was so uneasy that has just forever been ingrained in your brain.
I would say the ones that maybe it was just at the time when I saw them, but it's almost like what you didn't see with the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre,
Oh
because
man.
it's such a you finish that movie, and I'm just referring to the original one, but you walk away from that and it's almost like I got to go shower. I feel,
Yeah.
it's just you can tell how just like it's less is more. You're what is left up to the imagination, I think, is more uncomfortable than the movie itself,
Mhm.
so um it's just again that one to me always sticks out. And then the one that I can't ever forget is watching the original Alien, which when I first saw that, I had no knowledge. The premise, I didn't know anything about it, right? So I rented it. I'm watching it down in the basement. This is like during the middle of the summer. I'm watching it downstairs, and you get to the chest burster scene, and I know that it's such like it's like a pop culture moment now at this point, but for someone who had never seen it, it scared the living shit out of me. So I'm like, what am I watching right now? It's just it's not, this isn't ET, Alien. So
Yeah.
but that one, both of those movies have always stuck with me. I really I have a fondness for, especially for the Alien movies.
Oh man. And the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, the moment that I can't remember the character's name, but gets hit in the head with that hammer and he's
Oh yeah,
seizing.
yeah,
I'd
it's
never seen anything
uncomfortable.
like that.
Yeah,
Oh my God, dude. I don't remember what age I was, maybe a teenager or
yep.
so, and me and my best friend Ryan, he had introduced it to
Hmm.
me. And I was like physically sick. Like I was supposed to stay the night, kind of have like a couple of buddies over and hang out and pizza and all this.
Yeah,
And I was just like, hey man, I'm going
yeah.
home. I'm not doing this. I don't feel well.
The meat hook scene where
Oh,
Leatherface is putting the girl like on the meat hook, and
fuck, man.
it's just it just I again I mean it just kind of laid down the template for so many other slasher movies that came after it. And that's also why I appreciate it so much, just because of the impact it had. Movies like that, and I would say Halloween are the two that come to mind,
Hmm.
and maybe even an extension. A movie like Black Christmas, which I watched not that long
Oh,
ago with the
oh
holidays.
man, dude.
But yeah, those are the main ones that I can think of off the top of my
Hmm.
head.
Oh, I love that. I love that. I mean, as far as, you know, have has there ever been an irrational fear, of watching something and you're like, oh, okay, well now I didn't realize I was going to be scared of this, but here I am.
Yeah, I would say the big ones growing up because I right around middle school is when I first discovered Stephen King, right? So getting in reading, it probably a little bit earlier than I should have. The storm drains. As bizarre as that sounds, I'd be walking back from the bus. I'd be, hustling a little bit quicker to get back to my house because I'm walking past the storm drains. Just because it's like, listen, you just know that nothing good comes of it.
Yeah.
Um, the other one I would say, just with watching Jaws at an earlier age, just the idea of, if you're going to like a lake, even your own
Hmm.
pool, right? Because I know as when you're younger, it's just you don't know any better. So that was another one that just had me a little bit more cautious about swimming, and I would argue that it even carried with me into adulthood. Not so much with pools, but you're going out in the ocean. It's like, okay, I'm good. Just I'm not trying to go out too far.
Even our lakes.
For
I mean, being in
sure,
Michigan,
for sure.
it's funny that you say that, and I love that you mentioned the pool thing. One of these days, I'm going to have to wrangle up my old buddies Roger and Matt. As I was a kid, my buddy Roger had a pool in his backyard, and we would all go over and congregate, in the summers.
Yeah.
And I would always have a glass, like the water glasses, and they're like, "Well,
Oh yeah,
I mean, you don't need those." I'm like, "Dude, there's just something about not being able, even seeing the water from up top. When I go under, I want to be able to see,
for sure.
just in case." And it was that movie. It
Oh
was,
yeah.
dude, Jaws ruined me. Still to this day, we're surrounded by fresh water,
Yep.
brother, and I'm not doing
Listen,
it.
you hear cases about bull sharks, getting in freshwater. Listen, the
That's
idea of
enough.
that, still I keep that in the back of my mind. I don't care how far
Yeah,
north I am.
yeah.
I will, be a little extra cautious when I'm out, out in summer on the lakes.
I get to the point that my feet aren't touching, and I'm like, yeah, I'll come
I'm
back.
I'm
I'm
good.
I'm no I'm all right.
Yeah, 100%.
That's awesome. I love that. Now, I mean, does anything come to mind as far as, because you mentioned reading I'm sorry, Jurassic Park, and the relationship with the movie? Is there anything as far as a movie that you feel like did a better job than the book did, as far as the adaptation?
I would say the first one that comes to mind above all else would be the Hellbound Heart. So that was adapted
Oh
into
yeah,
Hellraisers, or the
Hellraiser.
first one. Yeah.
Hmm.
Um, I've read the book. I think that both exist in their own space, and I like what they did. I think if you didn't have Doug Bradley and the direction that they took with the movie, um, I just don't. I can appreciate both of them kind of on in their own merit, but that's like really the only one that I can think of that I feel
Okay.
like really kind of stood out to me in that regards.
Did you see the remake that they did, the Hellraiser remake?
I did.
What'd you
I
think of that?
it was. I thought that it was more of a return to form if you're talking about maybe the first like I always the first two are the ones that always stand out to me out of the Hellraiser movies. I feel
Yeah,
like that they're
totally.
such a tier above any of the other ones that released, and I felt like the quality of those movies after that point kind of got watered down.
Hmm.
But that the one that came out a couple years ago, I thought it was solid. I'm kind of
Hmm.
surprised that we haven't heard anything past that point for like a
Like,
follow up.
yeah, I agree. I thought it was great. I mean, like we can have hit or miss things, with
For
remakes,
sure.
and especially with it being still kind of along, the vein of the original. Um, I have always liked Hellbound actually more than the original, but as far as the original
Yeah.
movies. But yeah, I thought it was, pretty decent as far as just the portrayals and the fellow that played the Chatterer. You're like,
Yep.
oh,
Builds
okay,
out builds out the lore a little bit. That's
sure.
what I like the world building that, especially with the second one, it fleshes it out with the Leviathan, and you flesh it out even more.
Hmm.
It's just such a unique premise that I feel like it's like, even after the second one, I'm like, I kind of want to know more about this world, and I didn't think that ever carried forward with any of the other sequels. It just kind of got some of them got a little goofy,
Yeah. Yeah. Oh,
you know.
yeah. Yeah. Definitely. Definitely. I mean, we have like I love Critters. We
Yep.
get to like part four or part five of certain things. I'm just like, what? Come on now. It's even with series with me. It kind of drives me insane when something is like somebody's telling me about it. They're like, man, it's 12 seasons. It's just 3 hour episodes. I'm like, oh my god,
Yeah,
like that is a huge
for
commitment. I
sure.
don't know if
For
I'm
sure.
if I'm
I
if
that's
I'm
I
getting into
swear
this.
that's why I think like I don't know about you, but as you get a little bit older, you're a little bit more picky about the movies that
Sure.
I'm going to sit down and
Yeah.
watch or the
Mhm.
TV shows that I'm going to commit to because you know The Sopranos and Twin Peaks, I find myself revisiting shows like that versus there's I think that there's some decent shows that have come out like in more recent years, but I just don't think it really holds a candle to some of those ones that are so notable.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. And I agree too. There's different things. My wife, picks on me sometimes because she's just like, for all the things that, you sift through and say that you don't want to watch, you're sitting here watching this. I'm like, yeah, dude, this is awesome.
Yeah, listen, you can write it off as like you're researching something.
Yeah, yeah. Now, with all the fun, subgenres that we have, as far as personal favorites to you, I kind of wanted to dig in, a couple with all of, horror is just this big body of, you have this section and this section and this section. We always
For
had
sure.
the horror section in rentals, but there's so many different, subgenres to it. What comes to mind as far as a favorite body horror for you?
Ooh, body horror. I would say I would have to probably go with The Thing, and just
Oh man.
because it read obviously I think everyone knows that it was a remake, but um, it just really defined that to such an extent, and it's like the isolation of all these guys that are just trapped out in the middle of nowhere, dead winter, and but the effects that came with that were just insane. Seeing that for the first time, you had just never really seen anything like it, and I would almost argue, I know Halloween's probably the most notorious Carpenter movie that people bring up, but I would almost say that the Thing
I
is
think
almost a more superior film.
Yeah, I think it's close too. The thing is always something that people bring up, even as a favorite, of all time.
Yep,
But like you say, as famous and as big as Halloween is, and notable, yeah, the thing is absolutely insane.
the effects are nuts, and I would say kind of going back to what we were talking about earlier. We were talking about Cronenberg. I know that his catalog, like I could easily pick out anything out of that, and I feel like at least his early work, and that would apply to this. But I would say more recently, Possessor, by his son, Brandon
Hmm.
Cronenberg,
Sure.
was unexpected. I didn't really know what I was walking into. We saw it at the drive-in,
Yeah, me
and it
too.
was it was just off the wall, just nuts. And
Hmm.
I appreciate movies like that push the envelope or try to raise the bar for what movies can be. And that one I have to put up there.
Hmm. Oh yeah, and funny you mentioned I saw Possessor as well in our local drive-in, and that was one of those experiences that I realized I kind of miss the theater
For
experience of
sure.
seeing movies just because reactions of things. Every once in a while something happens and I'm sitting there like, oh shit, and
Yep.
I'll kind of pan over and look and see, oh, people are covering their mouth or somebody's kind of like tucked under a blanket or some
It's a
shit. It's
shared
like, oh, okay.
experience, right?
Yeah, yeah. Like, okay, I'm not alone. Thank God. What about vampire movies? Now, this isn't something overly popular with me, but there are some that I do love and I appreciate. What comes to mind? What's a favorite for you?
Um, so we were talking about Black Christmas earlier. Same
Mm,
director, Death Dream. So super. At least
Death
I had
Dream.
never. Yeah, I'd never really heard of it
Hmm.
until maybe within the last couple of years. I believe Blue Underground did a 4K release of it, but I can't recommend that
Whoa,
enough. As far as because
whoa,
I
no
feel like
kidding.
there's a lot of movies out there that, especially vampire movies that have just been, like Salem's Lot and Nosferatu is another one. I thought that was like the Robert Eggers one. I thought was really solid.
Dude,
But that
I
one I don't ever hear talked about that much as far as a horror movie, and 4K transfer on it is incredible. So if you
agree.
get a chance to check that out, I highly recommend it.
Yeah, I maybe the name sounds slightly familiar, but I'm not familiar with the movie at all.
I think you'd appreciate it.
Dude, same director as Black Christmas too.
Yep,
What is this, 70s,
I
80s?
believe so. Don't quote. I know it's in the 70s. I'm not 100% sure as far as the year.
Man, no kidding. Dude,
Yeah,
yeah, I'll have to
he had
check
a
that
knack
out.
for he had a knack for kind of I believe he did a Christmas Story too. So all spectrums.
The director of Black Christmas
Yeah,
did A Christmas Story?
yeah,
What?
yeah. Swear to God.
What?
Yeah, polar
What
opposite.
the fuck?
Two holiday classics, right? I guess depending on your preference, but yeah, I lean a little bit more on the Black Christmas side of things, but Christmas Story growing up, that was another
So
one
with
that I
this
was exposed
and
to.
Porky's.
Yep,
What the
look
fuck?
at his
No way.
filmography. He did a lot of yeah, Bob Clark, a lot of he has a wide filmography
Wow. I'm like I'm blanking on, I mean I find myself so many times on IMDb and like, oh well, this movie's really cool. I wonder what other things and maybe
Yeah,
actors and cinematographers, but I guess I've never gone down that rabbit hole. That is insane.
for
No
sure.
shit.
It's yeah,
Wow.
I think you would really dig it
Damn, no kidding. Okay, well, yeah, Death Dream. I'm gonna have to write that down
for
because I'm
sure.
gonna have to check that out. Maybe even today. Shit,
Yeah,
I'll let you know, brother.
keep
Or
me
maybe
posted.
Harrison's got it, a
Yeah,
rascal. Fucking take more of my
Harrison, come
money,
through, man.
bastard. What about creature feature? What comes to mind there?
So I have to give a shout out to Jaws for sure, just because it set the standard for that. But one that I think I would have to give a shout out to was Jordan Peele's Nope.
Oh
Just
man.
because that was just such a that's like the blockbuster experience that I miss.
Mm-hmm.
Those large releases, and especially with it in Jordan Peele's hands. Jean Jacket, I felt like was such a it's a unique spin. If you were to take basically Jaws in the Sky, or
Mm-hmm.
it's just I, I don't know, that one. I thought it was such a fun experience watching that in theater, and
Dude.
had me on the edge of my seat the entire time.
Yeah, and the almost fire in the sky moments of, the people getting, sucked down and
Oh,
trapped in this kind of,
uh,
dude.
it's it's very uncomfortable
Yeah, you
watching
ain't
that scene.
lying. Holy shit. But yeah, I did love, when my wife and I saw it in theater, that was one of the first things I kind of picked up on was, when you kind of see the UFOs back behind, the clouds, or you're kind of looking up
Yep,
and panning up there and like, is something going to move? Like that was very,
for
Jaws. And,
sure,
and I
for
think Jordan
sure.
Peele's kind of come out, saying that as well. But I'm just like, oh my God, I
It's
love this.
less is more.
Yep.
The build up, the suspense, the tension that leads up to the payoff at the end makes you appreciate it that much more. I mean, you could say the same thing for to a certain extent with Jurassic Park, but
Hmm.
I mean Jaws is like notorious for that. You don't see the shark until almost, I would say, what, three-fourths of the way through the movie,
Yeah.
full on. But
And you have Score.
yep,
That's just
and that's
scaring the
another
shit out
thing.
of you out of the whole time.
Yeah, I think that that's another appreciation that I've really developed over the years. It's just the whether it's collecting on vinyl or just listening to it in general, but the
Hmm.
soundtracks that come with some of these movies, and just really finding out about a lot of these different composers, Goblin, Tangerine Dream,
Oh
different
yeah.
bands and artists like
Mhm.
that. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Well, what about a folk horror? This is a personal favorite of mine.
Okay, so I don't know if you consider this folk horror. The one that I kind of wanted to pick something that's a little bit more obscure, but Pumpkinhead. Can we consider that
Okay.
as folk horror? Yeah,
Sure.
kind of like weird creature feature. I felt like fringe folk horror, but um, that one, growing up, you'd see it on AMC, and it was just so intense. I don't know if it's. I feel like it's of its time, but.
Yeah.
Yeah, I felt like it had elements of that. That was the one that I figured. I was like, I'll throw a curveball with Pumpkinhead.
And solid, dude.
Yeah.
I love that. Is it Lance
Yep.
Henriksen's in that one?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, dude.
Yep.
The effects, having the monster that we end up having, the payoff there, you're just like, oh man, this is so sick. I
Yeah.
can't believe it. What about a comedy horror? Also a favorite of mine.
Oh, come on, man. Revenge of the Living Dead. That's Revenge of the Living
Never
Dead.
seen it.
What? Oh man. Okay, so it's punk rock. It's just
Oh,
such a fun movie. I can't suggest that enough. That is probably I would put that like in a tier all on its own. But Revenge of the Living Dead, they had a couple sequels after that, and they're cool in their own right. But the first one, it's it's a classic. I always come back to it at least a couple times yearly.
is it is it an American movie?
Yeah. Yep.
Revenge of the Living Dead. I'm like, I can't even think of like what the
I
cover art
guarantee,
would be or
I
anything
guarantee,
like that.
I guarantee Linnea Quigley's in it. I guarantee if you saw the cover art, you've probably seen it at some point.
Huh? No shit. Wait, is it like black and green?
It's no, it's all in color.
Hmm. I'm gonna have to peep this out. Yeah, I'm not sure because at first I was thinking Return of like you're talking about Return of the Living Dead, but this is a completely different thing.
Yeah, it's Return of the Living Dead.
Return of the Living
Yeah.
Dead or Revenge of the Living
Oh,
Dead?
sorry. I said yeah, Return of the Living Dead. Not,
Oh,
yeah, my bad.
oh
Sorry. I
I
was
was
looking at
like,
something. Yeah, my bad.
okay. I was like, Linnea Quigley is in this. There's, it's punk rock. Okay, dude.
Yeah, my
Return of the
bad.
Living Dead.
My
That
bad.
movie
Sorry.
is
I
so
was like
sick.
I was trying to multitask, not doing a great job at it.
No, no, not a problem at all. I was just like, oh man, dude, like, how am I missing this? We get through, but I was gonna say, not knowing these different movies, but like Death Dream, and then now this Revenge of the
Oh
Living Dead. I'm like, fuck,
no.
I've got to do some research. But I think there is actually a movie called Revenge of the Living Dead, and I'm like trying to pick up. I'll do this afterward, but I think there is actually a movie of that, and I'd never seen it or heard very
Yeah,
much
I know
about it. So,
the sequels. I appreciate two and three for what they are, but Return of
hmm
the Living Dead, the first one is
dude,
just it's one of my favorites for sure.
so good. Yeah, I love that. Last but not least, let's talk about a slasher, brother. What are we talking about
Oh
here?
man. Okay. So the ones I came up with that I felt like I always come back to as probably my top options. I love The Burning. Um, I love
So
Friday the
fun.
13th Part 2
Oh,
just because
oh,
I'm a sucker for the campfire atmosphere.
okay.
Um, those camp horror movies that came out in the 80s, 70s, 80s, that vibe.
hmm
Madman, if you've ever seen that,
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah. Sleepaway Camp, movies like that. There's just it's kind of like its own subgenre, but I have appreciation for those movies. And I would say if we're kind of going outside that realm, I love Tenebrae. Tenebrae, obviously, I pointed that out earlier, but that's a personal favorite of mine.
Love it, dude. This is not a this is kind of a hot take and not going to be popular with you, especially. I'm not huge on the original, probably the original two Friday the 13th
Really?
movies.
Okay.
No.
The first one I can understand,
hmm
but the
I
second one, yeah,
probably
that
like that one a little bit better, but part two, it's never resonated with me.
so
I don't know why. I think
what's your personal favorite?
probably part four.
Okay.
I
Okay.
just the aspects, the mask, like I appreciate all of the movies and like the sequels, and that's probably like either that or Nightmare on Elm Street as far as a
Hmm.
franchise, especially the sequels. I can appreciate with Friday the 13th when we're even part five when we have
Yeah.
Roy and it's not even actually Jason. That movie's fucking cool as hell.
It's like its own I
Its own thing,
appreciate
kind of.
yeah,
Yeah.
it is. It's like the copycat killer.
Uh huh.
So it's kind of each one is kind of its own thing. And I do appreciate I would say all of them really up until um Jason Takes Manhattan. Some of the ones after that are just so hit or miss, but those are
Uh,
like those first eight are probably the comfort movies for me when it
totally.
comes down to maybe, sick day or, during the summer you're just trying to binge on some movies and yeah, those are the ones I find myself coming back to.
Totally. Totally. And I love too. I mean, it wasn't to knock or say anything about, your appreciation for it.
No, no,
Because
no.
actually I think Friday the 13th part two, I think was the first DVD I ever bought. I think that
Oh,
was
no
like
way.
my like introduction to like, buying DVDs and horror movies in general.
Okay.
So I should
It's a
love it
slippery
more.
slope.
Yeah. Yeah. Here we are, dear Lord. But So, I mean, as far as all of these interests, and then, like myself creating this page, where do you come to, be introduced to having, an Instagram or having some sort of a social media to be able to share this community?
So the whole it started with just I think following other channels and just kind of seeing the horror community. Just there's so many people, excuse me, out there that I felt like appreciated it the same way that I did, and that was what inspired me to at least kind of gauge if anyone that I followed or people that I was connecting with had some level of interest in it because my long-term goal was to get into YouTube and podcasting and things like that just because I would love to have that discourse
Hmm.
with others that kind of like yourself that appreciation for them because it's the few and far between you can chop or chop it up with and have these conversations with. Most people are very, I would say, base level knowledge when it comes to movies or horror movies at that. So
Sure.
start building momentum with that. And my goal this year is to really kind of kick things off and start moving in that direction with doing reviews and talking about physical media and things like that. So
Sick.
it's just life gets in the way, right?
Oh, dude, you ain't lying. Yeah, it's definitely one of those things. I mean, as far as scheduling, and like recently, these
Absolutely.
11 o'clock interviews have been kind of helping, and then with doing some of these things, though, every once in a while, like yesterday, I had a guest that was in Japan, and so trying to figure out time zones
I,
and
I caught
you
that.
know.
That was very. I was looking at the timing of things. I'm like, look at this guy. He's on top of things.
We had to figure it out, but
Yeah.
I mean, it's awesome, and such a cool experience for I mean, me doing this, but as far as anybody else, that there's so many people involved in film, and like I say, people in the scores, people that are involved with cinematography or costume design, and they all have such cool stories
For
behind these things. So it's like
sure.
it's plentiful out here. It's never anything where I'm like, oh, you shouldn't do that or you shouldn't do
Yeah.
interviews. Or, dude, I listen to so many things and find out so much new information and get so much knowledge about things that I've never even known.
I
And
think it's connecting with others, especially and I would say more so in state. That's a big
yeah.
thing because I just I'm constantly trying to find more mutuals when it comes to this interest because I feel like it's the few and far between. Connecting with you and then Harrison
Hmm.
was a great way to at least kind of have a chance to see okay there is that level of interest and that passion when it comes to this hobby. So
Hmm.
yeah, very very cool. Instagram definitely has its highs and lows. you know
Yeah, no, definitely. And that's, kind of like a frustrating thing as far as even some friends that have hundreds of thousands of followers or doing, merch is, just some of the things with like algorithm. And so I think, the biggest thing with like taking on any of this is just first and foremost having fun,
oh yeah,
having that passion and love for what it is that you're doing. And it doesn't have hundreds of views or it doesn't have whatever. Yeah, at the end of the day, I mean, it's just one of those things that it's about, the fun of it and about, the
absolutely,
interest that we have.
absolutely, I agree with that 100%.
Totally. What now? You're going to be working on some videos here. Do you have kind of a setup you're working on, or are you just
Yeah,
keeping it?
so that has been it's been kind of a work in progress. I initially had maybe I jumped the gun on it a little bit last year, but I really wanted to build up my following through Instagram just to see, okay, this is like a step in that
Hmm.
direction. I just wanted to see if there was people that would want to listen to what I have to say or interested in like physical media or just horror in general. But it's just crazy, just it's I don't have a large following like that, but just over time the goal is to just, continue to build it up and be able
Hmm.
to meet more people like yourself. Just see where things go from there. But yeah, YouTube and yeah, YouTube's going to be like the main outlet for sure.
Cool. Cool. Wow, man, I look forward to it, brother. I mean, if there's a space for me who's constantly saying sick on shit and swearing too much and
Yeah.
constantly calling myself a doggy, I mean, you'll be all right, buddy.
That gives me optimism. It gives me some hope.
Absolutely. And there's, I mean, there's always going to be people that want to say whatever. And, at the end of the day, like, take it on and do it
For sure.
yourself. You know what I'm saying?
For sure. You got
You
to
don't
be, you
have
got
to
to,
watch.
yeah, exactly. And that's the thing. I think at the end of the day, you're doing it for yourself. And,
Mhm.
an interest that's important to you. So I think ultimately, as long as you like the content that you're making or that you would watch it, I mean, I think that's a win in itself
Having fun. Having fun.
for
Yeah,
sure.
dude. I look forward to that. I mean, and something, I mean, as far as for as long as I've watched movies and collected, something more recently that I've been doing is paying a little bit more attention with special features or
Oh
with
yeah,
commentaries along that the movies are playing too. And so there's an endless amount of information that's out there, and an endless amount of stuff that people don't know. Basic movies, Jaws, Halloween. So it's cool, just for somebody to gain an interest in what it is that you're talking about or your content, and to find out new things about shit that they loved since they were a kid.
yeah. I feel like those are great starting out points, and then you find, I mean, Reddit and Letterbox,
Mm-hmm.
and just talking to others who are really into this, or even through YouTube, like finding different outlets where you can hear about someone's point of view on movies that were either important to them, or movies that maybe I've never heard of. I love discovering new movies that way.
Mm-hmm.
These obscure giallos, or slashers, or erotic thrillers, or things like that. Those are like the
Mm-hmm.
subgenres that I really gravitate towards. If I can find ones I've never seen, then that's a huge plus.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you mentioned in the slashers, even there's an Indonesian movie I picked up recently called Srigala. You ever heard of that?
Oh yeah, yep,
Very
yep.
Friday the
Terror
13th.
Terrorvision.
Yeah, yeah,
Yep.
yeah, dude.
Oh, it's
Oh yeah,
nuts.
TerraVision's.
Listen, I will say that you were talking about TerraVision. I recently found out about them. We were in Chicago last year around this time, and that catalog of movies has really opened up. The shot on video movies that I maybe had heard of. I never had a chance to see them, but to see the love that they put into these movies, it's just
Mm-hmm.
they get my highest praise when it comes to, if you're trying to get into more obscure horror, that is the way to go. And they have other releases, but yeah, I can't recommend them enough.
Dude. Yeah, I agree. My buddy Kyle, he's a lot more with the SOV stuff, and I'm a little bit more hesitant. I have certain ones, but one day he'll get me with a couple of copies, and I'll probably end up, digging down that rabbit hole. But I'm just like,
Listen, you
oh
ever need
yeah, yeah.
any recommendations? I got you covered.
Oh, Jesus. I'll get you in contact with Kyle. You guys can talk about this shit.
Okay, we'll chop it up.
All right, some kind of, just in wrapping here, some kind of rapid fire, just random, things that come off the top of your head here. A horror remake that you like better than the original. What comes to mind?
Oh, that's tough. And I'm not saying by a wide margin, but I like Night of the Living Dead, the
Oh,
'90s
dude,
one. And it's
absolutely.
it's not. It's no knock on the original. I that I hold in
It's
its own
notable for
tier.
a reason.
Yes,
Yeah,
but
yep,
but I
yep.
I like that they can exist in the same space, the same way that Suspiria, the
Mm-hmm.
two different takes on it exist. I would say Night of the Living Dead from the '90s is one that I'm just excited. I'm fingers crossed. I'm hoping that gets a 4K in the near future,
Dude,
because that needs some
agree.
love. They were talking about, I think, doing some sort of a director's cut. They were talking with Tom Savini,
Mm-hmm.
and it sounds like that is something that's in the works. So
Man,
I don't know. We'll see. It's very
I
exciting.
love that you mentioned that too, because hopefully we get that. That'll be awesome. Tony Todd
Oh
and
yeah,
having Tom
yeah,
Savini directing, like, come on, dude,
yeah.
Jesus H. What's a favorite pet in a horror movie that comes to mind?
My wife and I were talking about this last night. So
Uh-huh.
we the one that I gravitated towards was, is it Gordon, the dog from Friday the 13th Part 4? Probably like the smartest dog, let alone pet, out of all of them. He like knew when to get the fuck out of there, excuse me, but like he knew, he saw the writing was on the wall, and he got out of there. In most cases, it's
Uh,
either like the animal um deaths, if that happens in movies, is always hard for me. I'm a big animal advocate, but listen, he knew what was up. So
Dude, he
um
smelled it.
yeah,
They,
he knew.
they're smarter than us.
Yeah, my wife was saying Muffin from Friday the 13th Part 2, but I was like, that dog got everyone to let their guard down, and
Yeah.
then she gets snatched up. Like the girl gets
Yeah.
Jenny gets snatched up at the end. So what do you mean? I
Yeah.
don't know if I agree with that.
Oh, dude, I love that. Gordon, rock on, brother.
Yeah,
And I love animals that always have like
for
some like
sure. Same.
random dude's name, as far as like Gordon or Todd, or you're just like, oh,
It's the
yeah.
middle class working man. Gordon the dog.
Just some average ass Midwestern fellow that works
Yep.
at a shop somewhere.
Yep.
Oh, I
Yep.
love that. Here's Dave. Uh, Jesus. Use of practical effects. You kind of mentioned this with the thing, with Alien as well, but
Yeah.
maybe something that kind of just goes over the top, and you're like, how the hell did they do that?
The ones that, man, the ones that come to mind are, I would say, with Glenn in Nightmare on Elm Street, the bed scene, and you already had with Tina at the beginning of the movie, and it just set the bar so high.
Hmm.
First time watching that, I'd never seen anything like that.
Hmm.
So, let alone like you're already shook up from that, the opening scene to this, and it just goes to show how I felt like Wes Craven just very ahead of his time with a lot of the social commentary,
Hmm.
what he was doing with some of these movies. It's just that's why I think we come back to these movies so often. It's just because it's kind of set the standard.
Hmm.
The other one I'm trying to think of would probably be from Lucio Fulci's Zombie, the eye splinter scene,
Ugh.
where it's like obviously with the practical effects, it's very uncomfortable to watch. Even if I know that this is just a movie,
Hmm.
it is a hard one to watch. And trying to think, the other one that I would say is kind of gnarly is Halloween 3, with the laser
Oh,
that
oh,
shoots Marge
yes.
in the face and just it just destroys her entire face, and it's like she's basically like a vegetable at that point.
Yeah.
And
God.
you watch the first Halloween, second one, and then you realizing there's no Michael Myers in this,
Yeah.
and I don't know what I'm getting. This just seems like some coke fueled 80s adventure that you're getting with this movie. But listen, I constantly revisit that movie. I love it.
Oh,
So
man. Dude, I love it. Yeah, shout out to that too, to Halloween 3. I mean, I love, for the most part, some of the deviant movies that have, that difference, or like Halloween 3, Friday the 13th 5,
yep.
and having something that's like, oh, okay, still kind of in this realm, but in spirit, so to speak.
you
Yeah,
can
that,
I
that that's
you
awesome.
can appreciate it. I think over time, remember, especially with Halloween 3, that was just so universally hated for a
Hmm.
long time. And I remember AMC would always, play Halloween 3, 4, 5, these movies that um, got a lot of love, I think, as a result of that. And then in revisiting it, here I am years later, and it's like I have an opportunity to meet, Tom Atkins and,
Hmm.
Stacey Nelkin. Like it's kind of a full circle moment. But yeah, I don't know. It's neck and neck with that in the first one. I love, the Halloween franchise.
Dude, so sick. My phone is trying to die for whatever reason. This is the reason I kind of hate doing
Yeah,
these on
it's all
the
good.
phone, but it but it ends up working out here. I have one last thing I kind of prepared for us, and I wanted to get your take on. We've written a movie, all right. We wrote a movie, and it's about some friends who are attacked by a killer while cleaning up after a shift at a local video rental. Now, you're going to play one of four lead actors in this
Okay.
movie, and you can choose the other three. First of all, let's go over who would be the other three, and who would be the other three actors in this movie with you.
Oh, damn. Man, that is you got me on the spot there. It could be anybody.
For anybody from movies that you love,
Oh
anything
man,
like that.
that's a loaded question. I think you caught
It's
me off
not
guard
done,
with that.
brother.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not done.
Um,
Little finale fun.
man, I feel like any movie, it's not complete without Tom
Love
Atkins. Put him in the
it.
mix.
Yeah, there you go.
Um, I think I've, as far as maybe someone to throw into the mix that I have a greater appreciation for is, who is it? Lauren Lavera from, Terrifier.
Oh yeah, okay,
Yeah, yeah.
okay.
So just like one
Shit.
of, like, I would say a more recent Scream Queen.
Okay.
Um, oh my gosh, I'm blanking on the actor's name who played Tommy Jarvis
Oh yeah.
from
Damn it.
uh, Tom
Yeah.
Matthews. Tom Matthews. So throw
Yeah.
him in the
Yeah.
mix. And how many do we
Beautiful.
have? We got, is that three?
That's three right there.
Close
I think
enough.
that's good. Yeah.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Listen,
Now, you get to choose this being in any universe. So, we have this scenario. We're at a video shop. It's the four of you. You're cleaning up after, and you have to choose a killer. So, who would you have as far as that's going to be attacking you guys, and you have to one by one get picked off
oh
by?
my God. Um, I'd I'd probably have to say Jason. Like that'd be pretty. It's just because it's so iconic. And I'm sure that there's probably, if I really sat down and thought about it, there's probably more obscure options out there. But
But
yeah, I mean,
he's folding your ass in the cash register and tossing people over
yeah,
walls.
man. I mean, listen, end of day, am I really going to be mad about that? I mean, it'd probably be
No.
shitty, but at least it's a cool way to go out.
He could take a Nightmare on Elm Street tape and beat the shit
Yeah,
out of somebody out of it just
yeah.
for a
Listen,
homage.
death by video.
Love that. All right, last up, who's going to be directing this? You can have anybody that you want that's going to be directing this
Oh
movie.
man,
Who would be heading it?
that's tough. Um, Man, if we could, like, I would love to see Lucio Fulci's take on it. How just over the
Oh,
top and
okay,
gory, yeah, yeah.
okay.
Because,
Some
I
use of
think that,
color in there.
yeah, just you know, I've always kind of wondered, like, if you had a different director and a different, with a different franchise, what would that look like?
Dude.
Kind of figured I'd try to pick someone that's, less obvious, compared to John Carpenter or Wes Craven or, someone along those lines.
Dude, I mean, it'd be sick. Hopefully something, at some point gets made like that and we can kind of bring back having some video shops and then kill a bunch of people in them
Yeah.
for a movie.
Listen, we got to bring those slashers back, the old school slashers. I think I don't know if
So
you ever
sick.
saw it in a Violent Nature,
Oh,
but
oh my
um,
God, did I love that
oh
movie.
Lord, that that at least it's a step. If we're not going to get Friday the 13th, I guess it's a step in that
Did
direction.
you like
Some
it?
I
Oh,
did, I did.
oh, okay,
It's
okay.
I don't think it. I think it. It had maybe some things that it could work on because it sounds like they're doing a sequel,
Hmm.
so maybe clean a few things up. But I think it was ambitious. I
Sure.
appreciate the fact that it kind of was more of your art house Friday the 13th.
Hmm.
So
Sure.
um, yeah, if we can get more of that, I'm all for it.
And funny, I guess one last thing too with touching on that movie is I think a lot of the hate comes from that finale like end sequence and being so long. But when we come back to, the less is more, that whole
Hmm.
time that whole conversation is going on, I'm just sitting there and I'm like, she's either bringing him back to him
Yep.
or he's going to come out from somewhere and then nothing happening. It was oddly satisfying to me. I was like, oh,
I kept thinking the same thing at the
okay.
very end of it, and I'm like, where is this going? And it's kind of like you said, less is more. It kind of leaves
Uh-huh.
you, kind of leaves you, kind of wondering what's out there, or what could happen. And I
Mm-hmm.
think it's good because it leaves the door open for a possible sequel.
Totally. Totally. And hopefully that happens too.
For
So,
sure.
man, dude, Steven, this has been so awesome.
Oh,
What fun.
yeah.
We're going to have to
Thank you.
meet
Thank
up
you for
in
having
person
me.
some point
Absolutely.
and have some fun
Listen,
talking
we
some
know where
movies,
we're
buddy.
meeting. We already know where we're meeting. We got to get my fix probably in the next couple months. So I'm sure I'll make a trip out to Muskegon.
Sure. Yeah, let me know, buddy. Whenever you're heading over there, we'll meet up and probably waste too much
All
time.
right, for sure. Listen, our paths almost crossed. We were off by a couple hours, but
Yeah,
next time, yeah, we'll definitely link up for sure.
absolutely. Brother, thank you so much. Anybody who tuned in a little bit late, this will be edited and have it up on my YouTube page here in probably the next couple months here. And yeah, we'll keep in touch, buddy. You
Awesome.
take care.
Thank you, brother. I appreciate it. Thanks for
All
having me.
right.
All right, take
Have a
care,
good
man.
day.
You
Yeah,
too.
bye
Bye.
bye. Page.
He's a lo-fi horror guy. Yeah, he's kind of a guy, but he is so lo-fi, a horror guy. Yeah. Lo-fi horror guy has been recorded in front of a live studio audience.